Okay, so I got a video response from a YouTuber called Darkbit37. It's a small channel. It has only one video. It's the video response to me, or at least it's a video about me. So, which is kind of cool. But anyway, I want to thank you for making the video. In this video, I will address it. I will play some clips from your video and say what I have to say about them. Before that, I will show two comment threads as a sort of background information for anyone watching this video, so they know what's the story here. So this comment thread is under my video, the video response I made to Muta, some ordinary gamers. Basically, you can read it yourself. It's he making the claim that I should be put to insane asylum because I make these videos on the internet, because I have these opinions, or because he thinks I'm a pedophile. Well, I'm not, and even if I were, that's not how institutionalization works, at least in my country. You're not going to be put to mental institute or insane asylum just because you have opinions on the internet, or even if you have some kind of a sexual preference that's taboo. You would have to be completely out of control. You would have to assault people on the streets. You are not going to be incarcerated or locked up in an insane asylum very easily in my country, which, you know, respects liberty, is not a fascist one. So yeah, I mean, that's the, I don't know how it is in your country, but yeah, I don't know if he's joking here, to be honest, because these comments are just kind of silly. Now, the second comment thread, this is under his video. So basically at this point, so I left him a comment there. At this point, I have watched his video, and my interpretation is that the main substance of his video is this claim he makes that I'm deleting his comments. And that's what he thinks. I don't delete his comments. I don't delete anyone's comments, but that's how he feels about it. So I point out to him that I'm probably going to make a video response to him, and then I just say that shortly answer the claim by saying that, yeah, it's YouTube's algorithm that keeps doing that to people's comments. It has done that to me many times. That's why I don't debate on comment sections. YouTube can just arbitrarily silence you, and it just sucks. Okay, that's what, you know, we'll see what Darkbit responds to that. So essentially, he says that he feels he has no reason to believe me, which is like, okay, yeah, I get that, but then again, you also have no reason not to believe me, and I guess that's one of the differences between the two of us. Like, I don't by default assume people to be liars. And also he says that I should provide some kind of evidence, or he would like me to provide some evidence in my video response that I'm not deleting his comments, which is like, I don't think that's a very good standard, that I have to prove my innocence. I think it's probably him who would have to, like, in an ideal world, maybe it's he who would have to prove his accusations, especially when he makes a public video where he makes this accusation. Then again, I understand it's a bit difficult to prove that I'm deleting his comments. So anyway, I just think that's a bit silly standard to have. But anyway, I do have some material. I mean, that's the first video response I got, so I want to pay some respect to that, and I want to do my best to respond to that. So I do have some material I'm going to show to Darkbit. And yeah, I think now we are ready to look at some clips I've taken from his video. I think you can watch his video in its entirety. I have the link in the description. By the way, I have to say that I think his video is quite polite. I think his video is much more polite than the comments he leaves. He even says that, yeah, I shouldn't be harassed or anything like that. And I echo that. I think you shouldn't harass Darkbit. You shouldn't even dislike his videos. To be honest, there's no point disliking small channels' videos. It just damages them. Why would you do that?
So he basically, so his point is, he tries to tell you he's for freedom of thought, which is in and of itself a very valid cause. But then he goes on to say he's defending pedophilia. Basically, he is, and that's exactly, you know, what is That is exactly what his channel is all about.
So you make it sound like it's this bizarre thing that someone would talk about freedom of thought and then have this angle on the subject that is a minor attracted people. Well, in my opinion, I would respond to that by saying that when we're talking about like freedom of thought or freedom of speech violations, it's not usually the average Joe who is at jeopardy. Okay, it's not the majority because they are less vulnerable. It's those groups that are in the fringe, that those groups that are in the margin, that are at an increased risk. Now I already talk about like I give concrete evidence that there is this kind of an thought crime legislation in like half of Europe, and it's against pedophiles essentially. So basically, there's laws that essentially seek to forbid them from fantasizing, which is of course quite counterproductive when you think about it. Like you're taking away their safe outlet, ethical outlet. So essentially, there is evidence that there is freedom of thought violations taking place amongst that group or against that group. And like when we think about from historical perspective, it's always like when there's a Holocaust taking place, it's not against the popular groups, okay? It's not against the majority. It's always those people who are already pretty much bullied, those people who are driven underground and dehumanized and to an extent misunderstood. For example, in Nazi Germany, okay? Like the rhetoric against Jews, have you read about that? So yeah, I don't think it's so bizarre that I would have this angle on this subject, in my opinion.
Freedom of thought, I completely understand, but you posted all of this on the internet. You posted it on YouTube. That makes it available for use that makes it available for me to look at and see that that's your opinion. So you're at that point, it's gone beyond freedom of thought.
Firstly, I want to point out that I haven't implied that what I'm doing on YouTube is freedom of thought. My videos essentially focus on freedom of thought. That's what I support, but I'm not saying that when I post videos, that's an expression of freedom of thought. But yeah, I agree. Of course, if you post something on the internet, that's not freedom of thought. That's freedom of expression, rather. So we agree on that.
Here's the thing: his channel description says, it talks about freedom of thought, freedom of thought, right? Well, then, but apparently not freedom of thought for anyone who disagrees with him when it comes to the topic of map sexuality, because he's, like I said before, he has deleted 3 of my comments because I have said something in disagreement of his premises.
Well, didn't you already say that if you post something on the internet, if you make these videos, it goes beyond freedom of thought? So even if I deleted your comments by your own logic, by what you just said in the previous clip, I can't restrict your freedom of thought. I could restrict your freedom of expression. So you're gonna have to be consistent what you mean with the term freedom of thought.
The funny thing is, if you go and try to harass Ascending Pleiades in the comment section, yeah, there's a good chance your comment's going to get deleted. So he's actually deleted a few of my comments that I commented on his video. Well, 2 precisely. I believe. Well, 3 actually. 3. He's deleted 3 of my comments that I tried to comment.
Okay, I'll address this claim right now. But first, I just want to briefly say that harassing somebody in the comment section is not exactly the same as saying something in disagreement with someone's premises. But maybe that's a bit nitpicky thing to say, but just pointing that out because you're kind of making it sound like which comments are you leaving? Are you harassing me in the comments? Or are you just critiquing me in some kind of a civil way? So even if I did delete your comments where you claim I should be put to insane asylum, well, would I be a horrible fascist person if I did do that? I mean, do you think there are many channels on YouTube that would allow the kinds of comments I allow? There are literally people accusing me of being a pedophile in the comments of my videos. Like, if I had even the slightest interest in censoring you guys, why the fuck would I leave those comments up? It would make no sense. So it's kind of ironic that you would make this video accusing me of this crime of censorship, when I think it would be kind of difficult for you to find someone on YouTube more fucking feverish in their appreciation of freedom of thought and freedom of expression and all that shit. So yeah, but anyway, from your perspective, it would seem that way, that I'm deleting your comments because you can't see them. Well, obviously that has happened to me as well. Like when I post comments and I log on with some kind of other internet connection, I see that those comments are gone. But now I'm going to show the material I have to sort of substantiate my version of things. So we're now on my YouTube Studio page. We can see the comment thread there. This is the comment thread you started. Okay, so I have all the options there available. Now I click on the video where those comments are actually supposed to be. And as you will shortly see, they're nowhere to be found. Okay, they're just gone. Like what I hope you can appreciate with what I showed you is that had I deleted you, had I blocked you from my channel, I wouldn't be able to show you the comment thread I just showed you on YouTube Studio page. So that's the material I have. Take it or don't, but that's what I have at least. Now I'm going to move on to address the claims you make about pedophilia, and that's in fact something I would like my videos to focus on instead of this drama shit. Like I want to talk about the subject of pedophilia, and if you have arguments on that, like feel free to make video responses to me and stuff. Apparently the comments, the commenting tool is pretty broken on YouTube. Maybe it's because you said the word pedophile a bit too many times in some of your comments. That did the trick. That fooled YouTube into thinking that your comments are should be censored. So maybe it's the word pedophile you are using in the comments. So just a pro tip to anyone: just maybe avoid the word as much as you can. I mean, that's by the way the reason why I don't use the word in my titles or in my tags, is because I've heard that can get your channel into all kinds of trouble.
5 effects or biases concerning maps. Okay, that one. So that one, he basically tries to use, different psychological, he just basically takes concepts from psychological studies and tries to apply them to his argument that it's okay to be a pedophile as long as you're not a child molester.
I have just 2 brief comments on this one. I have to say that in my latest video, like the one before this one, the effects video, now that wasn't my intention. I wasn't trying to make a definite argument like in support of pedophiles. I mean, I was trying to be as objective and neutral as possible. I thought they were interesting concepts, so I wanted to share them. I wanted to make a video about them. One of them is actually my original idea, so yeah, it's kind of it's something I wanted to put out there for people to see. But then again, I do talk about stigmatization of pedophiles a lot in that video, so I actually can understand why you would make that interpretation. And yes, I do think there is a moral and legal distinction between a pedophile who molests kids and a pedophile who doesn't. That's right. Is that really too radical a view for you?
I don't know. Let me know in the comment section below what you think, whether you think that argument is valid or not. I personally don't. If you are attracted to children, you are mentally unhealthy, in my opinion, and you need to seek help from professionals in the mental health industry. So he's uploaded these videos about, and he's trying to defend pedophilia. My kind of rebuttal to that, I guess, and I don't really even need to go into all this detail like he does. I'm just going to come out and say, if you are sexually attracted to children and you are an adult, you're mentally unhealthy. That's just a fact of life. I'm sorry, those are just the hard facts.
First of all, the reason I go into all that detail, as you mentioned, is because I try to substantiate what I'm saying. Speaking of which, I think that's sort of what your video lacks. You make these claims that pedophiles are mentally unhealthy, that they need help, and yet you don't explain why you think so. You don't substantiate that. You don't have any evidence for that. You just state those things. So the good thing is, at least we know where we disagree, but you don't really give me any reason to change my views, to refine my views. You don't explain why. You don't give me counter arguments or arguments for your own position. It's just that you state your position, and that's different from substantiating your position. So yeah, maybe you should go into a little bit of detail as well, instead of making it sound like it's a bad thing if someone goes into all that detail. And second point I want to make is that even if pedophiles were mentally unhealthy, I don't think I believe that's still not grounds to treat them as subhumans or garbage. So just because someone is ill doesn't mean we can morally blame them. It doesn't mean we can segregate them or dehumanize them. So I think, like, for example, if someone has a coronavirus infection, now you wouldn't say that they are to be morally blamed for that. Or let's use some kind of a more neutral condition. Let's say someone has asthma. Asthma is also an illness, but you wouldn't say that it's okay, just because they are ill, it's okay to dehumanize them. So I hope you can understand where I'm going with this. It is that you need a separate argument as to why you think pedophiles shouldn't be defended, why you think no one should make videos like I do about the subject. Just because they are ill is not grounds enough to not defend them, I think. But are pedophiles mentally unhealthy, as you state? Well, to answer this, I will refer to DSM-5, which is Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition. This is the latest edition, and this is one of the two authorities on what is a mental disorder. So the second authority would be ICD, which is used in Europe. But it doesn't matter which one you pick for now for this conversation, because the criteria for pedophilic disorder are pretty much the same in both of those manuals. So essentially this dictates what are mental disorders. And yes, it is a cultural thing, it's not a biological truth. Like, what are mental disorders? That's not some kind of a natural fact that you find inscribed on a bark of a tree or something. It is a matter of culture. Homosexuality used to be a disorder in 70s, it's not anymore. And our culture even gets to dictate what is an illness in the first place. Like, according to these Western views we have that dictate psychiatry as well, is illness is not just a deviation, okay? Deviation from the norm or statistical average, that doesn't constitute an illness. Illness has to be a harmful deviation, and this is super important also in the context of pedophiles, as we will shortly see. So here we have the criteria for pedophilic disorder. I'm going to read these out. A. Over a period of at least 6 months, recurrent, intense, sexually arousing fantasies, sexual urges, or behaviors involving sexual activity with a prepubescent child or children, generally aged 13 years or younger. B. The individual has acted on these sexual urges, or the sexual urges or fantasies cause marked distress or interpersonal difficulty. C. The individual is at least age 16 years and at least 5 years older than the child or children in criterion A. So all of these criteria have to be met for a person to be classified as having a pedophilic disorder. I would like you to pay attention especially on the B criterion, because it basically alludes to the same fact I mentioned earlier, that illness always, by definition, by the very nature of the concept, always has to be a source of problems. In this case, for either the pedophile himself or those around him. In other words, if a pedophile hasn't acted on his sexuality in unethical ways, and those urges doesn't cause him any kind of marked distress or other marked difficulty, this basically means, it implies that, well, that pedophile doesn't have a pedophilic disorder. And I'm going to read out from the same chapter how DSM phrases it, because it basically says the same thing. So you don't have to take my word on this. However, if they report an absence of feelings of guilt, shame, or anxiety about these impulses and are not functionally limited by their paraphilic impulses according to self-report, objective assessment, or both, and their self-reported and legally recorded histories indicate that they have never acted on their impulses, then these individuals have a pedophilic sexual interest but not pedophilic disorder. So basically, how this should be interpreted is that, yes, there are pedophiles, people who are primarily sexually attracted to children, who do not fulfill criteria for pedophilic disorder, which means they are not mentally unhealthy. Now, someone could try to make a counter argument by saying that, well, I'm going to define pedophile as someone with a pedophilic disorder. And in that case, yes, then by definition, a person who is pedophile, that is, has a pedophilic disorder, would be mentally unhealthy. However, the problem with this kind of way to define pedophile is that then we would obviously have a population of people, a certain segment of population or certain number of people who would be primarily, sometimes even exclusively attracted to children. And we couldn't call them pedophiles because they wouldn't fulfill a pedophilic disorder criteria. So if you agree on the fact that, yes, if we have an adult who has a sexual preference that's primary or even exclusive towards children, if you agree with me on that we should call them as pedophiles, that it's only sensible to call them pedophiles, this means that logically we have to make a distinction between pedophilia and pedophilic disorder. We have to make a distinction between pedophiles whose pedophilia is non-pathological and pedophiles whose pedophilia is pathological. That is, they fulfill criteria for pedophilic disorder. The other claim you make is that pedophiles need help. Now, this is a very typical way of thinking about it, and this is also the claim Muta makes, and I already responded to him, but maybe I will use this opportunity to reiterate my position on this, okay? So I think this is slightly too nuanced for us to say that, well, they all need help. Like, what is this help or treatment for pedophiles anyway? You can't, according to science, you can't change their sexuality. But so that's a permanent condition. But what is not permanent is how they manage their sexuality, how they can deal with it. And it's kind of intriguing that I don't hear any other people essentially pointing this out, that yes, you can be cured from a pedophilic disorder. It's just that you can't be cured from the underlying sexuality. You can't be, the underlying sexuality doesn't change, but how a person deals with it, that's not permanent condition. So yes, you can be cured from pedophilic disorder. It's just that you can't change the sexuality itself. So this help is meant to essentially assist pedophiles in living ethically with their condition, like first and foremost ethically, so that they don't offend, and secondly, so that the condition isn't a significant problem for the person. So it isn't a source of like depression, anxiety. It is for many pedophiles. And if it's a significant source, like it really depresses the person, it causes great deals of anxiety, that's what happens. Probably like half of pedophiles, who knows? But yes, in those cases, that's not optimal. So essentially, they have pedophilic disorder and they have to work on that. Whether they do that on their own or get external assistance from professional therapists, so that's another matter. It's not so simple. I think there are many pedophiles who've had pedophilic disorder. Some of them have needed help, while others have learned to live with their condition on their own. So to be brief and concise here, I think when you say all pedophiles need help, that's a bit too, it's more complicated than that. It depends on the pedophile, it depends on how well they can handle their sexuality, and that's not the same for all pedophiles, how well they can manage it. However, there might be some room for compromise between the two of us. I think pedophiles should have a safety net, not because they all need help, but because any of them might find themselves in a life circumstance where they need to talk to someone about it, So they could have a friend, a good friend that they can trust. They could have a therapist that's, again, that they can trust, so that they can talk about these issues if they should become issues. Now, obviously, there are some factors that inhibit this, that are not conducive to them having a safety net, and that's stigmatization, for example. Yes, people don't want to hear about that. They have this fucking boner for stigmatizing and dehumanizing pedophiles. I know that, but it's just the fact that our society, like, when it makes it difficult for pedophiles to get a safety net like that, yes, it's not a solution to prevent sexual offending against children. It just makes matters worse. But yeah, I mean, a safety net for pedophiles would be important, just like it's important for parents. Again, not because they actively all need help, but in the future they might be exhausted, for example. So a safety net for parents could potentially, and in fact would most likely prevent all kinds of tragedies within the family if the parents have some therapist or some other family that they can rely on. So I think that's about it. I don't want to drag this video on unnecessarily, so I think we are done here. I mean, thank you for your video response. I mean it. I want there to be conversation around this issue. That's what my channel is about. People can critique me. I'm not claim I have absolute truth on this matter, but like, if you want to continue our discussion, you will need to substantiate more what you're saying. Like, explain why you think the way you do, or counter argue something I've said. Explain the flaws. Like, am I using flawed sources? Am I using flawed reasoning? Like, I'm all for continuing this discussion with you, but you will have to do more than just claim stuff, because I already responded to Muta. He was just claiming stuff, yes, and I wasn't impressed by him. And I'm not impressed by you just claiming stuff either. You will have to argue for your position or counter-argue my positions for the conversation to be fruitful, I think. Yeah, that's about it. Thanks for listening. That's all I have.